Hi, welcome to our lesson. We are focusing on systems technology and we will be looking at hardware. Now in this hardware we're focusing on the processing of a computer. Now what makes or what allows a computer to process this data that we've entered into the system? If you remember, we looked at input devices, we looked at output devices. Now we look at these devices that allow a computer to process data. Now, our processing hardware, we have a few hardware components that actually do this. The first main hardware that you need to know about is a motherboard. Now, a motherboard is a very important part of a computer because it acts as a housing unit for all other components. Now, when you define a motherboard, you'd say it's a main circuit board that acts as a link between components for communication. So what happens is that all these other devices like your RAM, like your CPU, and even your input devices, your mouse, your keyboard, are linked into this one device. And that is why we say this device allows your components for communication, meaning because they are all linked into this one device, they are able to communicate with one another. Now, what do you find on your motherboard? Remember, we find the CPU. Now, the CPU is the brain. Why are we saying it is the brain? It's the brain of the computer because it's responsible for processing data into information. If you remember our information processing cycle, we have input, we have processing, we have output, as well as communication. Now this is a very important step because you cannot have information if your data is not processed. So that is why your CPU would be the brain, because it needs to process this data so that you can have information. Now again, just to look at the CPU, you've got different types of CPUs because of the different types of computers we have. So if you are using your computer for different purposes, you'd obviously get different CPUs because your CPU would have to perform at a certain level in order to achieve what you want to get. Another processing device would be your memory, right? Your memory is actually there to store your data and programs that are being processed. Now, if you remember what I said memory is temporary. It means that it only works when your computer is switched on. So while you're busy typing, while your marks are being processed, memory is in action. So it acts as a storage while your programs are being processed by what? By this CPU. And in terms of the RAM, again, you get different sizes of the RAM for obviously different computers so that it can help remember your RAM would obviously assist your CPU in order to process by doing what? By storing these programs temporarily while the while the CPU is processing. You also have the ROM, but the ROM is part of memory. The difference is that your ROM is more permanent because it stores your instructions that tell your computer when to switch on and when to switch off. Right, so that's basically the difference in terms of the processing of your computer, where you need to know whether you have a motherboard with a specific CPU that can process a specific amount of data, as well as a specific RAM that can process or assist your CPU in terms of processing a specific amount of data. And that is it for our lesson for today, and thank you. See you next time.